Hello, everyone. We will start our session in a few minutes, just waiting for some more attendees to dial in and get comfortable. All right. Hello and welcome to the Wacom Comic Week on this lovely Monday afternoon or evening or early morning, depending on where you are joining us from. Thank you for dialing in on this first day of our first online comics and creative event brought to you by Wacom and Clip Studio Paint. We have a great session waiting for you today with the exceptionally talented artist Dylan Teague. But before we jump into the presentation, let me quickly share some basic housekeeping rules with you to make the session more comfortable and enjoyable for all of us on board. The session is roughly going to take 60 minutes with Q&A at the end, give and take a few minutes, depending on how the session proceeds. Please use the Q&A for questions, because with so many people in the room, the chat gets a little bit hectic. So keep the chat for immediate technical issues or for the fun bit. But if you want to raise your questions to Dylan or to us, please use the Q&A. We will keep an eye on them and answer them during the session or at the end. We try our best to answer as many questions as possible, but it's probably going to be not enough time to address all of them. We will, however, share a summary of this session as a video in a few days' time on YouTube, so you can revisit the session and go back into details. Okay, so who are we? For those of you who don't know Wacom, we've been around for some 40 years almost, and every time you're sitting in front of a computer and you realize that a keyboard or a mouse is just not going to cut it, you might want to switch to a Wacom pen-enabled device, be it a display or a tablet. And for those of you who know us already, thank you for joining us. Very appreciated. With us today, and some of you already noticed that from previous sessions, we're having a nice little relation with our friends at Clip Studio Paint. And I leave Joanna to do a little introduction on her behalf.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here again. For those of you who don't know Clip Studio yet, Clip Studio Paint is a versatile graphic software best suited for drawing and painting to create a wider range of content. With a wealth of unique features, it helps to create anything from illustrations over comics to concept art and animation. No matter if professional or hobbyist, Clip Studio Paint's natural drawing feel, along with its comic features, is loved by artists from around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Last two topics before we head in and start our session. This is the advertisement block, so to say. We do have a couple of very, very attractive offers for you ready. So if you consider purchasing a new Wacom device, do check out our e-store. You will find the special Wacom Comic Week related offers under the e-store /comic-week. Offers range from a 5% off on the Wacom Mobile Studio Pro pen computer to a whopping 20% off on select Intuos Pro and Intuos models. And that would be it from our side. With us today is Dylan Teague, and rather than reading what we have here on the slide, I'll probably hand over to you, Dylan, and do the introduction yourself. I wish everybody on the session a nice and enjoyable webinar, and yeah, enjoy. Back to you, Dylan.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks to Wacom and Clip Studio for asking me to do this. I've been drawing professionally for about 25 years now. A lot of that has been done for Judge Dredd the magazine and 2000 AD. I've also done a couple of comics for European publishers and a little bit for the American market as well. And I do a little bit of work for TV, sort of storyboarding and advertising. And yeah, that's about it really. I've been using Clip Studio for a long time, since it was called Manga Studio. I think I started with Manga Studio 4. And I've also been using Wacom stuff for a long time as well. I started with the Wacom pen partner a very long time ago and moved up to the Intuos tablet range. And now I'm using a Wacom Mobile Studio Pro. So I think that's about it. So am I sharing the screen properly here?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, there's Clip Studio. So yeah, I'm happy for people to just throw questions right away, really, and see what they want to know.
Okay, we can just jump into it. That's really not a problem at all.
Yeah.
Let's start with the basics. How did you get into drawing comics?
Since I was about 14, 15, I really got into comics and started drawing my own little pages and stuff. And I started sending them off to a couple of publishers in the UK. And I started getting feedback from Steve McManus at 2000 AD. That was when I was about 18 or 19. And he was really helpful, actually. He used to send me, because back in those days, you used to post off photocopies. And he used to send back sort of little criticisms on each page and tell me what I could improve on. And he'd send me sample scripts to work on. And I think it took about 2 years. And eventually I got offered professional work on a new comic that they were bringing out called Judge Dredd, Lawman of the Future.
Mm-hmm. That is quite unusual. Is that still an option for people today, or how do you?
I think in some ways it's easier today, but in some ways it's more difficult because it's easier to get your stuff seen, I think, by editors and different companies, but there's so much competition now that it's probably harder to stand out, I think. And
Yeah.
I don't know whether the editors can give individuals as much time as they used to be able to, because Steve McManus used to send me like photocopies of how to draw comic books and things. And you know, it was really helpful.
Yeah.
And there was 2 other comic artists who lived in Cardiff called David Roach and Mike Collins. And he sort of introduced me to them, and I was able to go in to their studio and even managed to get myself on a youth training scheme.
Wow. Yeah, I think the people would probably like to see some of your work as well.
Okay, I'll go to my, because these are some of the 2000 AD pages here. And oops. It turned into a drawing. Well, I'll do it on Clip Studio instead.
Yeah, that works.
This is a little thing I'm just doing for my own amusement, really, but it's been up on David Lloyd's Aces Weekly digital comic. So, I can show you how
your
I
own
draw
story
on these a bit later as well.
Your own story, or
yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's all me this one. It's not much of a story. It's just basically so I can draw exactly what I want to draw, and I'm hoping at some point to go back over it and pull it together and turn it into some kind of story.
So you're just thinking of scenes and drawing them, or I mean, there must be something. There's a
very
flow
kind
to
of,
it.
Yeah, there's a very kind of loose sort of she's some kind of super secret agent in space. she's lost her memory, and I think she's trying to find her sister. So, but I've left it very kind of loose, so I can go anywhere with it, really. But it's basically just so I can draw things that I enjoy drawing, like spaceship interiors and space.
So apparently you like drawing spaceships and interiors in space, which I think is a thing a lot of people struggle with. Did you have anything that you particularly struggled with as an artist?
For me, it's sort of, I don't know, I do find drawing quite difficult, and it's just about practicing, and you have to sort of just practice and research different things. I think the thing that's helped me the most in my drawing is I started going to life drawing classes about probably 15 years ago now. But just the act of going to life drawing and also keeping a sketchbook has made me improve my sort of observational drawing, which is really important. And it helps build up your visual library, because there's no sort of shortcuts to getting good at drawing anything, really. You just have to put in a lot of practice.
Yeah.
And then,
that seems to work for things like people and maybe buildings.
yeah.
How do you get to spaceships?
But what do you think? Everything you're drawing is basic shapes, really, and it's just how you kind of build on top of that. So for the interior spaceships, you do need a sort of good knowledge of perspective, so that you'll understand how things work in a 3D sort of space.
Yeah, it's like the panel at the top that we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
It has a lot of buttons and monitors. Do you think of what these buttons are, or do you just draw buttons where you think they fit?
If I'm honest, not really, but you have like a basic sort of thing, like, you know, these sort of things around here are going to be giving her information, you know, like in a car. It's kind of, so it would give her speed information and things like that. But that's partly why I like drawing science fiction, is you don't have to worry too much about how these things work in the real world.
Yeah. But something you certainly need to think about is the panel composition. It's like, do you have any tips on how to go about that?
Again, a lot of it is down to practice. The more comic pages you draw, the more you'll kind of get a sense of composition. But it's just sort of things like, don't just put something dead in the middle of a panel. There's a kind of thing about, if you draw a diagonal across a panel and draw sort of two right angle things by there and there, you kind of get these sort of two areas here will look nice in a composition. And there's the rule of thirds thing as well. If you, again, but it's, again, you don't want to be too mechanical about this. It's something you want to kind of get by feel, rather than sort of mathematically planning out what your compositions will be. But it's about sort of balance as well, having areas of negative space and areas of detail.
Do you have any specific rules for that, except for, like, some people talk about the rule, like the three, what is it called, the 30%?
Oh, right.
Yeah, the rule of thirds, and then 30%, or rule to have like 30% detail and 2/3 less detail or something.
I try and sort of keep it in mind, but again, you don't want to be too prescriptive on these things, or it can look obvious that that's what you're trying to do. But one thing that works a lot is, like, diagonals are going to be more more exciting than something that's flat on. It will give the panel a bit more of a movement.
Yeah.
And again, with stuff moving, like this ship sort of coming into panel, because I've given it a lot of space over this side here, it kind of gives it a bit more. Your eye sort of naturally thinks of where that ship is going to go to. So little things like that. And just watching films and TV and looking at the way they compose shots and things, all that can sort of help your own compositions, really.
Yeah. So we've already reached the question of what brushes you like to use.
Okay.
So
Well,
do you want to go into your process on how you make a comic page?
Or do you want to do about the brushes and stuff? Or
do you have different brushes for different processes, I would imagine? So
well, my main
wherever
brush,
you see fit.
my main brush is this pencil layout red, which was made by Ray Frendon. And I think it was when Manga Studio 5 came out. And this is the brush that sort of got me into drawing digitally. Because before that, I was just using Manga Studio as like a perspective aid, really, because one of the main reasons I got it originally was for the perspective rulers, because I was getting fed up of having perspective points miles away from my drawing board. So I could plot my perspective out. I'd scan my rough, take it into Manga Studio, plot the perspective out, and then print it out as a grid. But once Manga Studio 5 came out, and this brush in particular, actually, this pencil, it just gave me it suddenly felt like real drawing. So this is my main brush, basically. And but then so I'll do all my drawing with this on different layers. I'll sort of start off with a rough drawing and then maybe colorize the layer and do a new layer on top, and then tighten up what I've done. But then I have like this G pen. I use this more for when I'm putting in flat colors, and I'll make sure that the anti-aliasing is set to off. I've got a color pen here for, it's got a tiny little bit of texture in it and a watercolor edge on it. This marker pen I made myself is to try and mimic a Copic marker, which I like using in my sketchbook. Yeah, I don't use too many brushes. I sort of try and, it's mainly this red layout pencil is my main brush. And then I have the marker and the airbrush. And that pretty much does most of my coloring, basically. And then I have these for adding texture.
Oh, wow.
I did, yeah, I made this for myself as well. I scanned in a big ink splat. But these are great for just when you start coloring a page, just to use a color similar to what you've used and just go over it, and it'll add some visual interest to the colors.
When you create your pages for the story you make or something else, do you usually create a color palette beforehand?
On these ones, I'm trying to keep the color sort of quite limited. So I'm thinking about sort of cools and warms, and I'm keeping everything, it's not too far away from gray, but now and again I'll use a stronger color to stand out, say on the, there. But again, with coloring, it's something you just, the more you do, the more sort of natural it will feel to choose different colors. Because I don't think I'm not brilliant at with color sense, but I think if you try and keep stuff in a limited color palette with a sort of nice harmony about the colors, and then I sort of concentrate more on the rendering really.
Yeah. Do you have any works that inspire you to use certain colors or certain styles both when drawing and just coloring?
Oh yeah, I mean, I love the European science fiction comics from the 1980s, and that's what I'm trying to get with this stuff. I'm trying to almost try and make it look a little bit like watercolors best I can.
Mm.
So just using these sort of cool and warm grays. And there was an artist called Juan Jimenez who did the Meta Barons, and yeah, I just love his coloring style, along with Enki Bilal and Mobius. So because I'd started doing stuff in my sketchbook, like because these ones here actually are from my sketchbook, and I'm just trying to get as close to this feel as possible, but using Manga Studio. One of the ways I'll do that is by using a texture overlay layer. So there it is. If I set it to normal, you see it's a sort of paper texture. And if I set it back to overlay, it's very subtle, but it kind of tricks the eye into thinking you've done it on a real bit of paper rather than a computer screen. And that's, I think in a way that's even more important than what kind of brush you use, because it's going to add texture to even if you're using a brush with no texture on it, that paper texture overlay will give it the sort of impression of being on paper.
So you draw this one more for yourself,
Yeah.
but you certainly have worked with deadlines. How
Yeah.
did you get around to making your work process faster to meet those deadlines?
When I'm coloring other people, like this is an artist called Paul Marshall who I color for 2000 AD. So what I start off by turn this off. Just putting down a load of flat colors. It doesn't matter what colors these are. It's just it's all about the selections. So if I turn off the line art, you can see that they're all hard edge selections. And what that enables me to do, get everything back, is I've set up a special wand that will only respond to that bottom layer because I've put a little reference. I've made that layer a reference layer. And what that will do is color wand gone. If I use the color wand there, it will select that simple area there.
Oh, yeah.
And that means I can then it's not going to go outside that area when I draw on it, basically. But that's really helpful. I know that it doesn't sound much, but not having to go down to that flats layer each time and having the wand set up to only respond to that flats layer really saves a lot of time. And I've made a bucket tool that will do the same. It will only respond to that. I'll turn off the texture. It will only respond to that flat layer as well. But another thing I've found that will speed me up a little bit is, I'm sorry if this is getting a bit too technical actually, but on the layer that I do the rendering, I fill the area in the gutters between the panels with transparent ink, so that there's, if you look, there's nothing there. And if I then lock the transparent pixels on that layer, it means when I'm coloring, I don't have to worry about going outside the borders, basically, which again just saves a bit of time.
I've had a question for the perspective drawing.
Yeah.
Just in general, you talked about how you use the perspective tools in Clip Studio. How did you learn more about perspective when you started out?
That's one of my favorite things to draw, is sort of backgrounds and environments. So I've always been interested in learning how to draw perspective. My dad was an architect, and when I was really young, he sort of taught me the basics of perspective. And I mean, nowadays there's a ton of tutorials out there about it, but it does seem really daunting to some people. But it's, again, once you start learning it, it can be as complicated as you want it to be. You can just learn it very simply, and it'll sort of get you a long way. But you do need to learn it before the things like the perspective rulers in Clip Studio will kind of help you, because you can sort of tell when someone's just used the rulers without maybe a proper knowledge of perspective.
So did you study a lot of, well, if your dad was an architect, then you looked at a lot of buildings and just copied from there? And
he taught me how to do elevations from plans. It's like quite a complicated thing to do. Yeah, I don't think I can remember how to do that. But when you do that, you have you can project the 2-point perspective from a flat image, and that kind of helped me learn what 2-point perspective was all about, really.
Yeah.
But there's a brilliant, I think the Andrew Loomis books are all available online for free as PDFs. And there's one of those that goes incredibly in depth into perspective. And I've sort of learned a bit of it, but you can go as far as you like, basically, so that if you really get into it, you can accurately measure things out into space, into perspective. But there's also an artist called Scott Robertson on YouTube who does sort of freehand perspective, and that's really interesting as well. The way to sort of measure back by dividing squares and stuff in space.
Yeah. How do you go about perspective and sizes in science fiction environment?
Well, that's the thing I was on about with Scott Robertson. So what he does is he shows you that if you have a square and you draw across, that is the middle point of the square, basically. So if you got a square in perspective, and again you draw across, you'll find the middle point in that square. And then if you carry that on and draw, I'm not explaining this too well, and draw a line through the middle, this will sort of help you measure things. But what's good in Clip Studio actually is if you, I'm gonna have to find the perspective rulers here now. You can actually put up a grid. So if you see this grid, you can you see that clearly enough on the?
Yeah, it looks pretty good.
So, and this will do it for you, basically. If you see those the red lines, they're all already properly in perspective. And you can move them about to wherever you want. So you could place this on.
Dylan, I think your microphone might be turned off.
Is that okay?
Yes.
I don't know why. I don't know why it did that. But yeah, these. If you leave 2 squares in between each window, this is all. It's already done for you, so you don't have to do your own measuring, which is really useful actually, because measuring in perspective takes ages. And you can change the grid size. So you can get it to do, whatever you want, really.
Oh my God. So it probably depends on the content of a page. How long does it usually take you to draw a panel in a comic?
I am quite slow at drawing comics, which is why I tend to spend most of my time sort of coloring other artists or drawing covers and things like that. But it probably takes me about 3 days to do a page, 3 or 4 days.
So and that's like an 8-hour day.
Yeah. I think I'm quicker now, but I quite enjoy doing coloring other artists as well.
What do you enjoy most about coloring?
It's nice just to work on. I don't know why it's not. I got to turn my power on a sec. Hang on. I just really enjoy it because somebody else has done all the difficult work, basically, and your job is, the main part of your job is to not make it look worse, but it's just to kind of add to it, and you can get into elements of storytelling with coloring, and it's just a lot of fun, really, especially on computer now. It's just, and I've got to work with loads of different artists, and it sort of opens your eyes to different styles, and it helps then when I get back to my own drawing, I've got more things to draw on, basically.
Yeah. Where do you start for your own characters when you create them? Do you go with an idea of the visuals, or do you have like a little bit of a story in the back and you just wanted to have it in a setting?
For me, it's sort of all about the visuals, really. It was I mean, because this character there was a character I drew for 2000 AD just when I started, called Rose Orion, who was a sort of intergalactic thief or something. And then we did a couple of series of that, but it didn't really go anywhere. But so this character is kind of similar to her, but I sort of took it off into a different direction, basically. But again, it wasn't so much about the characters in this. It's more about getting to draw the environments and different designs and things.
Yeah. How much do you think about the shape language and the just the visual of things and what it expresses. So like the spaceships have a very unique look to them.
They just sort of come out.
Where did you get the ideas from them?
They just kind of come out that way. I try and keep stuff like a simple-ish silhouette and just sort of try and build on that, really. I do try and build things sometimes in SketchUp to get a better handle on things, but these were all too kind of curvy and complicated to build in that. But you know, I'm massively influenced by Star Wars and things like that. So, and they try and get some real world elements in there, like the way the cockpits work and stuff, just to sell it to people that it's a viable sort of spaceship. So.
Yeah, like some people, they use like animals, insects, and fish and stuff to design their sci-fi elements from. Do you have anything like that?
No, that's a really good idea to do, especially with sort of spaceships or something. Like fish are going to look like they're cutting through the space pretty well. So yeah, I mean, that's what you find. A lot of these concept artists will get a lot of inspiration from the real world, and it's something I need to do more of, really, because I tend to just do this sort of straight out of my head. But I think if you have got a good sort of lot of inspiration from somewhere, it'll make the design look more believable and less generic, really. But this was one I did for Duncan Jones, has got a graphic novel coming out, and I was the first artist to draw the main characters, so I sort of had to come up with the suits. And I was given a rough outline that, you know, military type suits. So when I started, I was just thinking of sort of simple grey outfits, but then once they start getting out and about, I got to design these sort of armor. And for this armor, I did look online for different police riot gear sort of images, and I did a mix and match of different things that I liked and put it all together, basically. And I think it helps make it look a bit more realistic then. And stuff like the guns, I'd need to research things like that, because
so when you have to design something for something that's the first time, how much freedom do you usually get with that?
Well, it was quite a lot of freedom on this. It was because it was very brief description in the script, you know, just saying they've got sort of military body armor on. So this is what I did. But yeah, online I found this cool sort of, I think it was a French riot police vest, and I really like the way these sort of extra shoulder pads in between those shoulder pads, and that's something I wouldn't have thought of doing just out of my head. So, and all these little joining little bits of Velcro, whatever they are.
For things like this, do you think about the practicality and how it would feel to move in these kinds of things, or do you just go with what looks cool?
Well, I think that's what you gain from doing research on it, that, you know, this is going to be kind of practical because it's used in the real world. I mean, I've added to it and it probably wouldn't be that comfy. With all this stuff hanging off her belt and things. But no, but I do, when you push yourself to do a bit of research, you get such rewards from it, because it just adds a lot more depth to your stuff. Because like I did a lot of, you know, looking on Google for different pictures of undergrounds and different underground tube trains and things like that, and the signage, stuff like putting signs in just really adds a lot of believability to what you do, really.
Yeah.
It's quite good fun. It's just, I find it hard to I find it really boring looking for the stuff. But once you've got it and you put it in your work, you think, oh, I should do this more. Because I like doing the science fiction stuff, but you're not really kind of pushing yourself if you just keep drawing what you like doing, basically.
So how much do you vary in what you draw for yourself? I mean, if you're already drawing what people are asking of you because of your job.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. A lot of my work is, I do work for Sky TV on the sort of advertising campaigns. And most of that is stuff I'd never, dream of drawing for fun. And sometimes it can be really hard to do it. But it helps increase your own visual library and stuff then. I think that's what you've got to realize if you want a career in illustration or comics, is that there's not many people who get to draw exactly what they want all the time. You sort of, a lot of the time you just drawing what's in the brief, basically. And I think in sometimes you think, oh, actually, I really enjoyed drawing that.
Do you have an example of that? Like something you were like, oh, I don't want to draw this, and in the end it's like, hey, this was kind of fun.
Well, this page actually, the underground
this
stage,
page, yeah,
because you just get so into it in the end. Like I said, I love drawing environments and stuff, and I just sort of ended up getting really into it, even drawing these turnstiles and stuff. But it's stuff like I probably wouldn't have, because it's pretty difficult as well, trying to work it all out in perspective and things like that. Because I think on the one page I had to draw the inside of a tube, which was really difficult to get my head around.
That sounds very difficult.
Because this one here. But what I did was I found a model online in someone had made in SketchUp of, I think I can get it out here. Put it on top. Yeah, if you see these here. So I got the SketchUp model, sort of fiddled around to get it into an angle that sort of matched my rough, and then placed that under the drawing and drew it, and that helped a lot.
Then just add more people to not draw all the details.
Because that's where your sort of knowledge of perspective needs to come in after that, is you have to kind of work out what people would look like at that angle and things like that.
Is it easier for you to visualize people like from the angle first, or like once you have the environment?
Well, with this, once I got the environment there, I kind of knew how people, how it would work. Because you've got a sense of where the chair is. So you just put them on top, basically. And what's hard is trying to work out how big people should be. So. But again, if you're thinking about perspective, then the sort of next person's head is going to be roughly in line with that person in the foreground. The feet were difficult though. And I think I put some perspective rulers to roughly line up with this model as well. So that would help me if I wanted to manipulate the background and things like that. But yeah, that was quite complicated. But like I say, I was quite pleased with the end result on that. So, and that is something I wouldn't have chosen to draw for fun.
When we prepared the session, we also talked about that you have a sketchbook that you use a lot of work. You do a lot of work in, and you wanted to show like how you put a page from your sketchbook onto the digital canvas, and there's actually a question about that.
Okay, so this was my where I did the roughs, and I think I've got them. We'll put them. So this is, I haven't got access to a scanner at the moment, so I just took a photo. So I just get that into Clip Studio, select all, and copy. And then if I go into the next page, so I'd basically use the free transform tool then and make sure that the aspect ratio box is checked. Just get it in my sketchbook. I'm quite I'm not working to the exact proper size because they're pretty small. But these are just a guide really to get me started drawing. And then I just take down the opacity quite a bit. And again, with these ones, my panel border tool isn't as important as on, I can show you how I do it on the Duncan Jones stuff, which is more. Because all I'll do with this now is rasterize it. Yeah, if you hold down Shift when you're using this, it will make it be right angles. Yeah, and that's basically on, because this is a sort of different style. I can show you how I do it on the Duncan Jones stuff.
Do you usually rasterize the panels once you've made them?
Yeah, because I'll show you this thing, because what I'll do then is mask off the layer so I can trying to find my roughs on here. There we go.
How many layers do you usually have for a page?
When I'm coloring someone else, I try and keep it about 4 layers. But when I'm drawing and coloring, it can get a bit out of hand. But because I've been using computers for so long, when I started, you could only have a few layers before your computer would. So I'm really of that mindset to keep my layers down to an absolute minimum. Because just so everything runs nice and smooth, really.
Are you the type to name your layers?
That's the problem. See, if I have too many layers, then I get get lost. But sometimes I'm really good, like, because the stuff I do for Sky, you have to send off layered images. Like, say it's a poster of all the characters. You have to have each character on a separate layer, and you have to draw what's in the background as well. So that is just a real nightmare. And you do have to make sure you name all the layers. Yeah, this is how I usually do my panel border. I've already got the page information is here. So if you can see, there's like a faint thing of where the panels will be and where the bleed is at the top. I think someone was asking about what resolution and size. Again, I like to keep down to as small as I can get away with, basically. So I think I did this about 350 dpi at print size. So yeah, so I put the first box down, and then I go to the cut frame border, which if you look over here, I've got the vertical and horizontal things set. And if you hold down Shift, it will do them dead straight view. And then with the object select tool, you can drag out panel borders to the edge. And then once I've got it to that stage, I'll rasterize it. And if you do a layer, if I'll fill in the transparent bit with some white. But I find the good thing now is if I put a layer mask on, I can make a selection around her foot. And if I fill, if you make sure you're in the mask bit, and then you fill that, but you haven't sort of deleted it forever because that's quite messy, and you can go back and forth then with the pen tool, like getting rid of it. And if you change back to ink, you can bring it back. So it just means you can go back and forth to mess about with your perspective, with your panel borders without having to go through it all again, basically.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Bring all these back.
Do you do the lettering as well for your comic pages, or does someone else do that?
Someone else does that. When I did French comics, you do your own speech balloons, and then someone else puts the lettering in. And at first it was really difficult, but then I found it really good in the end, because you get to compose exactly where the speech balloons go. Because I find sometimes when someone else is doing the lettering, you'll draw a load of stuff and it'll just get covered by a big speech balloon. Whereas with the French comics, at least you know that you're not wasting your time drawing what's under the speech balloons.
That seems like a real problem, especially with a lot of detail. You spend like a lot of time on them and then suddenly it's all gone.
Yeah, I mean, it's my fault for not taking the time to sort of really roughly work out how much space to leave for the speech balloons.
Yeah, it seems like in the page you have open right now, the lower panel with the 3 characters in it. It would seem that like a speech bubble would at least cover someone's face in that one.
Yeah, well, I got better at doing it, and I think sort of ended up by there, the speech balloon. So it was okay. I sort of do a rough idea of where stuff can go, but sometimes you have to put up with the fact that the panel's going to look weirdly composed without the speech bubble. But that's something you've just got to sort of let yourself go with. Because I did a job for 2000 AD a while ago. I don't know if I've got it here, but I think the writer ended up having to change quite a lot of his script because I hadn't really left enough.
In comics that are printed, especially with now that we have a lot of different mediums for comics, is the ratio of speech bubble and text very different, and also paneling? Because if you look at something on the screen, it may end up a lot smaller or a lot bigger.
Yeah,
you take that into account?
I don't know if it is taken into account really, and I suppose it should be, but I think everything's still geared towards how it looks at print size really. Yeah, because it's not something that can it'd be difficult really to sort of envisage every kind of format that something's going to come out in, so they have to just kind of go for the initial sort of format and do that. I think in some ways it's probably best to do that, because you want the page to sort of work at a certain size, and some comics do have kind of tiny lettering, which is quite difficult to read. But
yeah, like recently the whole webtoon style comics and online comics have become a lot more popular, so a lot of it is more geared towards smaller screens, and therefore you need bigger text. Do you have any experience with that, or is that something you've not
it's
looked
not
into?
the only thing I've done really is the space strip I did for the Aces Weekly thing, and I think that was designed to, if you have an iPad or a tablet on its side, the page would fill that. But they wanted it at quite a high resolution so that people would be able to zoom in and see the details.
Yeah. Speaking of zooming in and all the details, do you ever get lost in your details?
Yeah, that is one of the main risks with digital, I think, because you can zoom in so much that, like, I'd probably never really have drawn figures this small if I was drawing it by hand. But it's just something you've got to be wary of, because sometimes something will come out in print and you'll realize that it's just turned to mush basically, because you've just done far too much detail. So, but I think the more you do it, the more you get a sense. It's like when I used to work on paper, you end up getting a sense of what will work in print. And I think it just takes a little while until you've seen some of your work come out in print from digital things, until you sort of build up an idea of what's going to work and what's not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I am probably wasting my time with all this little hatching and things, but it's fun to do.
Do you sometimes look at other people's work and just really enjoy zooming in and looking at what they've done?
Yeah, I mean, I love really detailed artists' work, and it's nice to kind of, like, Travis Charis just does incredible work. And
you do like a lot of cross-hatching as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've made it for this stuff here. I've made a little brush that will do it for me. Because what I did is I used that pencil tool.
Yeah.
And, yeah. So it's cheating a little bit, but
Do you think it's fine to cheat with digital art like that?
Yeah, because I mean, I can, as long as you can sort of do it, or you know roughly what you're doing, because you can do this, but it'll just take you all day to do, you know. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things on Clip as well, is the hatching brushes.
Very good. Okay, I think we're coming towards the end already.
All right.
Yes. So do you have any final things you would like to give advice to people who are starting out and wanting to get into comics?
The main thing I'd say is keep a sketchbook and just draw as often as you can. And if you, I know no one can at the moment, but go life drawing classes and just can't get over enough how important it is just to draw as much as possible and get, because that's where you'll learn everything. I mean, you can watch YouTubes and tutorials and stuff, but it's not until you actually do something that I think you really learn what people tell you in their YouTubes.
And then how much do you draw per day? As it is also your job.
Yeah, but that's partly why I like coloring other artists as well, because it's still then it doesn't seem a chore to go and do sketching afterwards. Whereas when I'm drawing my own stuff as well, you do kind of exhaust that sort of drawing muscle, and you don't sketch for yourself as much. But yeah, just I think you'll find out if you try and draw as much as possible, you'll find out how much you really enjoy it, and that's the main thing. You have to just love the act of drawing, really. It's not so much what you're drawing, but you have to love the process of drawing, because you're going to be doing it a lot if you get a job.
That's very nice. You have to love the process of drawing. It's very poetic.
I mean, I think some people don't realize that, some people think it's just about drawing what they like. And I know I can slip into that myself as well, but I think you just need to have that sort of desire to get better and better at drawing and learn different techniques and new ways of doing things, so that you don't stagnate.
Okay. Yeah, I think there is still so many more questions, but I think we're pretty much at the end now.
Okay.
So
I hope it wasn't too bad.
Oh, no, absolutely. I think we've all learned a lot already.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for coming in as well. And feel free to send me questions on my Instagram or Twitter about Clip Studio or other drawing things.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Dylan. Thank you ever so much. It was also from my side, it was a very, very nice and interesting session. Beautiful and inspiring.
Okay.
It's really, really, really enjoyable. Thanks, Joanna, for moderating and co-hosting and asking questions. I think we've covered a lot of different topics, and it was, I think it was really, really helpful for many of the participants. The room is still busy. Chat and Q&A is still busy, so people are very engaged and very inspired. So thanks everybody. Thanks everybody for joining. Let me wrap up this session with just one more slide, actually 2 more slides. So if you want to learn more about us, Wacom, Clip Studio, or Dylan, do follow us on our respective social media channels. You can find Dylan at Dilbot2099 or at Dylan Teague. And as I mentioned, if you are interested in purchasing a product, do check out the e-store, e-store.wacom.com/comic week for all our offers. That was it for this wonderful session. We've got a whole program of many other sessions scheduled for today and for tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, basically the rest of the week. A highlight that might be fun for you guys to join in tonight is the chat and draw, which is coming up at 8 o'clock our time, which is a very casual get together, drawing, chatting, as the title says, and could be a lot of fun to just zoom in, zoom out, and enjoy a quiet evening. Thanks everybody for taking part in this. Thanks Dylan again, and hope to see you guys around. See you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.